Oh, it's icy and frosty this morning. So I'm going to make the occasional video about the whys of walking. That's what I'm going to call it. The whys of spending time outdoors. We'll look at what it does for human beings, our mental and physical health, our well-being. And much of that discussion will be evidence-based, but I also want to talk a bit from my experience. So this is fair warning. This kind of first attempt at one of these videos is going to dive heavy into that personal experience category. It's really muddy and slippy around here. So I love walking for all kinds of reasons, some of which you'll have seen me expound upon on this channel. Take my walk of the White Cliffs of Dover recently, when I found fossils and walked along the top of dramatic cliffs that are the physical proof of geologic forces at work on the scale of eons. That kind of walk excites my senses for natural history. A couple of weeks earlier, I journeyed in search of a forgotten holy site, hidden amongst boggy valleys, a bit like this one, and overgrown brambles. That video talks about human history and how the landscape can connect us to those that came before. Though not as ancient as the rock beneath our feet, well, maybe mud beneath our feet, it's no less valuable as a story because it's about people that have shared the same space as us across centuries. Walking through the landscape lets you experience and connect both with nature and human history, not just cognitively, not just in your brain, but in your body. It's a powerful thing, and in a sense that could be said to be a spiritual experience. There's a big puddle here. A hike is not too far from a pilgrimage, especially in the Celtic tradition when the destination was less important than the experience of solitude, being a part of nature. I'd like to tell you about a trip I took in 2017 that I think neatly illustrates how sometimes hiking and getting outdoors is about more than health and having fun. The joy of walking is beyond mere well-being. It can be about finding your place in a scheme of something far greater than yourself. So, 2017, I'm spending a couple of days hiking around Dartmoor and wild camping. I'm having a grand old time, walking with no real destination, just picking spots on the map and walking toward them. All the while, as I'm hiking, I'm trying to work through a feeling that I was a bit stuck in life. I was 30 years old, had an amazing family, but hadn't achieved too much career-wise. I was proud of what I did, but I didn't earn a lot. I knew it wasn't sustainable. The dream of being a full-time artist was fading. In turn, another big area of my life is my faith. I'd given a lot of energy into serving in a church, and I was facing burnout. I was having a crisis of faith and of identity generally. I'm guessing that lots of people watching can relate to feeling lost, feeling dislocated, feeling unsure where they fit into it all. The reason I can guess that confidently is because I've come to understand that we all feel that way. It's a very human thing to feel. You don't have to be in my exact circumstances or share my beliefs to understand what it means to ask big questions about what you're supposed to be doing with your life and what the meaning of it all is. That's part of the reason why I went on this walk, this wandering without any destination in mind. I was going to work it all out. That meant I wasn't just walking, I was using the time to think deeply. I was attempting therapy on myself in a way. And because I believe in God, it meant that I was walking and praying, saying aloud all my doubts and worries and trying to listen for a response that didn't appear to be forthcoming. After my first day of hiking, I pitched my tent at the base of a tor, and as I settled down to sleep, I remember feeling intensely annoyed at myself for expecting that a walk could make me feel any different. What was I expecting? That I'd bump into God walking along one of these trails and we'd stop and hash it all out? How could hiking address these existential questions? Instead, all my thinking and all my prayer was met with silence. The desolate landscape of Dartmoor was utterly indifferent to my presence. The natural world would carry on if I walked through it or not. It cared not for my presence, nor for my internal conflict that seemed such a big deal to me. You could say that's one of the first gifts that hiking in wild places gives. A sense of proportion and scale. The world is bigger and older than any human problems. It was here before me, and it'll be here long after I'm gone. And so I slept, and in the morning I awoke. I climbed up the tor and watched the sunrise while sipping on a cup of coffee. It was instant coffee because I hadn't yet discovered that coffee could taste good. Maybe, had that drink been a bit better, I would have appreciated that golden sunrise, but I didn't. I was still annoyed that I'd hiked around, and still I felt ill at ease with myself. I didn't want to go home feeling as unsure and disconnected from my life as I had been before I set out. But for some reason the walk wasn't working. My meditation had not centered me, and despite my prayers, it seemed that God didn't have anything to say about it either. I was on my own. I descended the tor, and the sun dropped back out of view as I entered the valley. Before long, I was walking through a newly planted pine forest. I hiked on for a while when suddenly and without warning I came to a clearing. In that clearing was a circle of standing stones. Imagine the stone circle at Avebury, only much smaller. In the centre of the circle was a cache. There's 4 standing stones arranged in a rectangle. It created walls and a 5th huge slab that made its roof. It was like a giant stone table. I walked around these ancient stones and wondered about the hands that made them. Neolithic people whose beliefs and spiritual practices were a mystery to me. I knew nothing of why the circle was built or what treasures were once in the cache. It didn't matter because I saw something that morning that made sense of the whole scene to me. You see, as well as the standing stones arranged in a circle, were still more leading off in a straight line from the edge of the circle, off toward the east. And as I looked in the direction they pointed, there was the sun again, making its way over the horizon and bathing me once again in its light. In that moment, it all clicked for me. Here were these people, 5,000, maybe 6,000 years ago, building a line of standing stones that pointed toward the rising sun. They were orienting themselves toward its life-sustaining force. Perhaps the sun was the apex of their understanding of the world, and so they oriented their devotion toward it to find their place in the landscape. The sight of this line of standing stones was a comfort to me, because there I was with the knowledge and benefit of the Enlightenment and discoveries of modern science, but when it came down to it, I realised that I really knew no more than the Neolithic stone lifters. I may not understand how it all fits together, but like them, I could orient myself toward the greatest sense of that which connects me to the world as I understood. What does that mean? For me, it gave legitimacy to my ecstatic sense of the world. When I went walking and had a sense of delight in what I saw, whether that be flowers, mushrooms, tiny beetles, giant trees or grand vistas, that joy is part of my making sense of the world. It isn't a cognitive understanding, it's a sense that I'm part of it. I'm part of it. I'm another expression of it. In walking, I reaffirm that I'm part of something greater and more wondrous than day-to-day life would have me imagine. And for me, sensing that I'm a part of this world points me towards something else and more mysterious. A sense of the divine behind the natural, beyond what is visible. Like the Neolithic people with their stones, I orient myself toward that light. A connection that I feel but do not understand. That was a real moment of epiphany, and it happened because I was walking. There's this language people use about certain places that have a sense of spiritual significance. They get called thin places. The idea being that the veil between the mundane and some deeper sense of connectedness is easier to perceive in these places. It's the language people use for places like Lindisfarne or Santiago. I'm not sure that it works like that. I think maybe people bring expectations and hopes with them that prime them to perceive something special. It's not so much that the place becomes thin, but the person. They become receptive. Through walking, I aim to keep myself receptive, to pay attention to my ecstatic sense of the world, to delight in the creativity and beauty that is in nature. I think it's good for my soul, and being an artist as well, it's good for my art. My creative imagination is a response to my sense that there is a creative imagination at work in nature, of which I, as an individual human being, am a part. Ladies and gents, the best feeling in the universe. It's deeper than I thought.